Good morning, teachers and fellow students. We are from Group 1, which we will discuss about Topic 1, Karl Marx Theory of History. In this topic, we will discuss about the biographical details of Karl Marx, intellectual influence, Marx theory of history, relationships of production vs force of productions, stage of society development.
Okay, four introductions of the Karl Marx theory of history. So the early socialist critics of the classical economics preach the dramatic reforms as their objection to the capitalism, and it's alleged the evil was morals. For example, the utopian socialist, which is the socialism that is a system in which society as a whole that owns the means of productions like factories, equipments and land rather than individuals. So the utopian socialists didn't think that the violence revolution should be used to change the capitalist system, as they did not believe that any form of the class struggle or the social revolutions, they did not believe the revolutions is needed or necessary for the socialism to emerge. So they did not believe that the violence or the revolutions needed to uh, change the capitalist system. So instead, they use the various and moderate way to persuade the capitalists to fight or combat poverty and equalize or uh, reduce the income gap between the rich and the poor. So, in other words, the utopian socialists wish to modify the classical liberalism and not to overturn the system that they support it. So, Karl Marx, the leader of the Marxian socialism, has dismissed that approach. Okay, for the next one, Marx also shares the early socialist moral outrage against the contemporary capitalism as their sharp criticism of the classical political economy and their socialist and their vision of the socialist of the for the future society. As however, Marx also believed that socialism wouldn't be forthcoming, wouldn't be happen until the condition or the situation from the working class declining or degenerate to the point of the open rebellion or to the point that the became the revolutions. He also believed that the capitalism had the internal contradiction or the inner issues between them that will ensure or that will ensure its eventual death. So Marx articulate a comprehensive critique of the capitalism as well as a dialectical process which the capitalism will be overthrown. So Karl Marx also believed that the social revolutions was unavoidable, or he believed that the social revolution is going to happen uh, sooner or later within the advanced capitalist countries. So he and his compatriot Friedrich Engels advocates the workers of the world to unite so that they can hasten the event to occur. Also, in developing his theory of history, Marx were influenced by some of the figure, or the big names of philosophers, like Charles Darwin, Josh Hegel, Feuerbach, and also David Ricardo. For the Marx theory of history, the objective of this topic is to discuss the Marx biographical details, the intellectual influences on his writing, on the theory of the history from the Darwin, Hegel, and Feuerbach, the correlation and the relation between them. Also, that's one is the Karl Marx theory of history, the relation of the production (ROP) versus the force of production (FOP), and also the sixth stage of the society's development in the Karl Marx theory of history.
Good morning, teachers. My name is Jesus Sands. Reference number 279-367. We're going to talk about the biological details of Karl Marx, where Karl Marx is born in Prussia and He was a son of successful Jewish lawyer as well. So he have a study at the University of Bonn, Berlin, and Jena, and he finished his PhD at the 23 years old. But his radicalism caused him lose the position in the university. So he turned into a journalism where he studied French socialism and English political economics. So at the end, he wrote the manifesto of the Communist Party in 1848, but he's been exiled to London in 1849. So he wrote many articles in the New York Tribune. So the first volume is his magnum opus Capital, Das Capital in 1867, but he died on 14 March 1883. So Andrzej edited his manuscript and published volume 2 and 3 of his work. Kafka published another three-volume of Marx, writing under the title "Theory of Surplus Value". Next, we are going to talk about the intellectual influencer, where there is three intellectuals that give huge influences to our world. The first one is Charles Darwin, which is theory of evolutions and natural selections. The second one is George Church, which is theoretical process, and the last one is Ludwig Feuerbach, which is physical materialism. So we're going to talk about Charles Darwin. Which Charles Darwin full name is Charles Robert Darwin, which is born in 1809 and died in 1883. He has been giving big contribution on evolution theory and natural selection process, which the most famous books by him is the origins of species by means of natural selection in 1859. He is born in a wealthy family and studied medicine at the University of Edinburgh in 1825, and he is fascinated with the natural world. So, in the 1831, he sailed to the Galapagos Island on a fire watch aboard the HMS Beagle. According to his famous book on the origins of species, if giving the definitions of natural selection, which is a process where a species survive. So, in details, is mean a species that successfully adapt to meet the changing requirement of their natural habitat thrive, while those that fail to evolve and reproduce become extinct. This causes evolutions of species, just like how we become a human from a monkey, or we say orangutan. In the Darwin's theory, which is observers and collectors, so he got enough evidence to support his idea about how life changed over time. In his in his theory, he says that world communities are dynamic and not static, which they change over time with new forms originating and others become extinct. The second one is evolution is gradual, where change arises slowly and steadily. Environmental change. Sudden change challenges a species' ability to adapt it. And the third one is the process of natural selections, which create different species. It specifically adapt to its ecological need. So in order to let us have a clear understanding about Darwin theory, I take this picture from lecturer slide, which show actually what Darwin theory means. So from our first picture, we can saw there is a population of mice has moved into a new area. So where the roads are very dark. So some of the mice become black, some of the blind are brown. So in the period of time going, the brown mice are eaten by the predator as it is more visible compared to a black mice. So the black mice have the high possibility to being survive. So the black mice will be have the chance to reproduce and have more black mice. So the brown mice with the less possibility to survive will be more lesser and the black mice will become more. That's how the Darwin's theory works, which is called natural selection. Hope you understand what is natural selection. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Shamil Nazlim bin Zulkifli. Next, I will present about the George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, or we call him as George Hegel. George Hegel was born on August 27, 1770 in Stuttgart, Germany, and then he died in 1831. Here we can see that he lived for 61 years. Hegel was the son of a revenue official. He had already learned the elements of Latin from his mother by the time he entered the Stuttgart Grammar School, where he remained for his education until he was 18 years. To fulfill his parents' wishes, in 1788, Hegel went as a student to Tübingen until he received a certificate for the theological course in 1793. In 1816, George Hegel had a university teaching position as professor of philosophy in Heidelberg, and subsequently in 1818 he had the position of professor of philosophy at the University of Berlin until his death in 1831. For the dialectical process, a dialectic method of historical and philosophical progress that postulates first, a beginning proposition called a thesis, where it is the original statement of an idea. Second is a negation of the thesis, we call the antithesis. The argument to challenge the previous thesis often draw on a new data. And next is synthesis, where the two conflicting ideas are brought together to form a new proposition. It is new argument for an existing source, usually resolve apparent contradiction between thesis and antithesis. Okay, this is three-step process as in the picture that I take down here, where the original idea, thesis, for example, an elephant, is opposed by an opposite idea, antithesis, for example, is snake, and the interaction between them, for example, the shape of an elephant and the color of a snake has produced a new idea that we call synthesis. With the interaction, we get the new idea is dinosaur, which later become a new thesis. I think maybe you all have seen these memes on Facebook, or any media, because before this I saw this picture. I think that's so funny when I saw it on Facebook, but actually it is useful for us to understand this method. Okay, next is Ludwig Andreas von Feuerbach, or we call him as Feuerbach. He was born in 1804 and died in 1872. He was a German anthropologist and philosopher. Ludwig Feuerbach abandoned theological study to become a student of philosophy under George Hegel for 2 years in Berlin. And then Feuerbach returned to Bavaria to complete his study and receive his doctorates from the University of Erlangen in 1828. His famous book is The Essence of Christianity, 1890, which provide a critique of Christianity that strongly influenced generation of later thinkers, including Karl Marx. For the philosophical materialism, which was developed by Feuerbach, according to Feuerbach, materialism refers to the emphasis on real thing, or the world of reality, as opposed to the realm of ideas or idealism. In his book Essence of Christianity, Feuerbach made a distinction between reality and fantasy. For example, in his word, religion is the dream of the human mind, but even in dream, we do not find ourselves in emptiness or in heavens. But on earth, in the realm of reality, we only see real things in the entrancing splendor of imagination and caprice, instead of in the simple daylight of reality and necessity. Here we can see that Feuerbach contended that the characteristic people attached to God are actually characteristic of humanity, that God is truly a product creation of man. Feuerbach does not agree with the gods that man construct. It is God that are not real, and then worship them as if they are supernatural or divine. The fact is the God that were built were just a product of their imagination. For Feuerbach, history consists of the process by which people recognize and accept reality through the use of their sense perception. With this, according to Feuerbach, religion does bring unreal happiness to people and needs to be eliminated in order to get happiness. The next is the influence of Darwin, Hegel, and Feuerbach on Karl Marx ideas in developing his theory of history. For Darwin theory, Marx sees the parallels between Darwin's theories of evolution and natural selection and his own theories of political economy. Marx discovered that contemporary biological organism and economic organizational structure are the result of earlier transformation. Thus, Darwin inspired Marx's view that analysis that is dynamic is the only way to truly grasp society. Next, Marx agreed with Hegel's theory of a three-step dialectical process in which an initial thesis is countered by a competing idea we call antithesis, and their interaction result in a new idea is synthesis, which then become the new thesis. For example, 6 stage: primitive communism, slavery, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, and communism. It has evolved from the conflict between the old and the new idea in Karl Marx theory of the history. And finally, Marx replaced Hegel idealism with a modified version of Ludwig Feuerbach's concept of philosophical materialism. He agreed with Feuerbach that history is the process by which individuals employ their sense impression to learn, to know, and accept reality. Marx also had the view that in order to achieve true pleasure, fantasy such as religion must be stopped. Marx declared in 1844 that religion is the people opiate for people to experience to happiness. Religion must be abolished as the source of their false contentment.
A very good day to everyone. My name is Yogashini and my matrix number is 279737. So today I'm going to present about Marx's theory of history. Marx's theory of history was created by merging Darwin's theory of evolution and natural selection, Hegel dialectic process, and Feuerbach materialism. Marx asserted that the force of production, FOP, established a system of production relation, ROP, that maintained them throughout the history. ROP and FOP, on the other hand, contradict each other. FOP, like technology, capital kinds, labor skill level, are dynamic and continually developing, but ROP, laws, property relation, interpersonal society ties, are static. History, according to Marx, is a process in which the static ROP thesis finally collide with dynamic FOP antithesis. Conflict changes the system, allowing new ROP to emerge, synthesis and new thesis. The mechanism for overthrowing earlier societies is a class conflict. The superstructure strengthened the static ROP. A society's social institution, political framework, and governing mechanism are referred to as a superstructure. Marx argued that the superstructure represented the ruling class interests. The superstructure validates the operation of the base, FOP and ROP, and defends the allied power. All components of superstructure contributed to the status quo. The theory of history has 6 stages of society development. Karl Marx saw 6 stages in the evolution of society. The first stage is primitive communism, second is slavery, third is feudalism, fourth is capitalism, fifth is socialism, and last one is communism. Stage 1 is primitive communism. What is primitive communism? Primitive communism is a traditional economy characterized most of the societies in the early centuries. The traditional economy is built around the way of life of the society, and which custom and the traditional beliefs are critical in the production of goods and services. It is based on the traditional agriculture, hunting, gathering, and fishing, while barter trade is used in a place of money. The family unit is important. It is an important factor in the traditional economy, with the most families progressing from hunters to farmers only in places where they can put up permanent structures. Given the traditional economy, economists refer to the way of life and interaction in the society as a primitive communism. In this mode of production, all were equal and had equal access to forces of production, and society was a hunting-gathering society. Food was abundant and the population was low. Relations of production were based on cooperation. Because the production efficiency was relatively poor, workers could not regularly create a surplus above the subsistence need of themselves and their dependents. As you can see the slide right now, this is the example of primitive communism, the society of Native Americans before arrival of Europeans. Before the arrival of Europeans in the 15th century, most plain tribes lived in a village along river and streams. Next, second stage, slavery. What is slavery? Slavery, by its very nature for Marx, took the form of continual violence and the perpetual fear of torture and premature death. Slaves were both capital assets and labor. The rules of profit maximization in the slave economy, when there was an active slave trade capable of very rapid replacement of human chattel, led to the frequent application of a 7 years rule, viewed by the planters as the average life of their slaves, on which their computation of value were based. For the slave-owning capitalist, it was of relatively little significance if the turnover of slaves through the premature exhaustion of their working life and existence took place, as long as they were easily replaceable. Furthermore, under slave production, it was possible to work slave more intensively, super exploiting them than the case of wage labor. Consider to the birth of class society with the appearance of private property, employee productively improved to the point they could produce more than their food. Slavery became very profitable, which led further exploitation and class strife. People begin to cultivate plants and raise animals on a large enough scale to support large population, and the agriculture sectors advanced. Citizens are the owners more than the simply uh, more than the simply their own property. Land ownership especially important during periods of agriculture expansion. Slavery facilitated the expansion of society productive forces, but it finally became a barrier to future progress. Slaves were hardly the most motivative workers. Slave revolts overturned society and ruined this time period. According to Marx, slave society fell because it's ran out energy by itself. That's all from me. I'll pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Haziq. My metric number is 277208. I will continue present about the stage 3 of society development, that is feudalism. According to Karl Marx, feudalism was defined as the power of the ruling class, the aristocracy, in their control of arable land, leading to a class society based upon the exploitation of the peasants who farm these lands, typically under serfdom and principally by means of labor, produce, and money rents. That's why during feudalism, there are many classes such as kings, nobles, knights, peasants, and serfs. In feudal economy, agriculture rather than hunting became the most important human activity. It has happened because the shift of the economy from slavery to feudalism led to shift of strategic resources from human labor to land. So those who land became most important and powerful in the society. Besides that, at the very top of feudal society were the monarchs, or kings and queens. The state is ruled by monarchs by inherit their position or through marry or conquer their ways into the leadership. They were expected to keep order and to provide protection for their vassals. Next, Marx state that feudalism stage is unique because the exploitation of the serf is most clearly visible. Marx and Engels rejected the traditional understanding of feudalism as consisting of fief and relation among the elite and emphasized the lord's exploitation of the peasants as the essence of the feudal mode of production. Next, for the content, in the feudal system, serfs were allowed to work a few days per week on the land assigned to them, but were forced to work the other days on the lord's land. This was obvious exploitation. Serfs had a greater incentive to work well than did the slave, and feudalism brought a higher development of society's force of production. But the system finally limited further progress and it was overthrown and superseded by capitalism. Now, for the stage 4 is capitalism. The capitalism was replaced feudalism. Karl Marx identified that the capitalist model created a sharp divide between the wealthier citizen and the poorest. Marx condemned capitalism as a system that alienates the mass. His reasoning was as follows: although workers produce things for the market, market force, not workers, control things. People are required to work for capitalists who have full control over the means of production and maintain power in the workplace. Although Marx hated capitalism, he paid tribute to the great increase in productivity and production. Under capitalism, there are two main groups. First, proletariats, that is working class. Second, capitalists, who own the means of production, such a factory. Therefore, the workers are wholly dependent upon wages. Capitalists are dependent upon money invested to create more money, or the essential feature of capitalism is the motive to make a profit. Besides that, capitalists will pay the worker as little as possible, in fact just enough to keep him alive and productive. Thus, the burgess, owners of the means of production, amass enormous wealth, while the proletariat falls further into poverty. Now for the content. In capitalist societies, products and services are provided by the individual. These individual employ workers. Under capitalism, say Marx, the techniques of production become increasingly concentrated and centralized, and the system of private ownership of capital becomes a barrier to further progress. An increasing amount of unemployment and miserization of the working class transpires, causing the workers to revolt. So the state becomes an instrument of force used by capitalists against workers. However, the working class is success to overthrow the capitalism and establish its own dictatorship of the worker, that is, socialism. For the next stage is socialism. Firstly, the socialism is the stage between capitalism and communism. According to Marx, capitalism faced class struggle and contradictions that inevitably would lead to its being overthrown and replaced by socialism. There is theory of history and law of motion. In socialist society, it is the government who own and operate the means of production. For example, land, natural resources, factories, and other. The citizens earn a wage but only receive what they need. The aim of the game is equality between all people and the elimination of social classes. Under this socialism, private property in consumer goods is permitted, but the capital and land are publicly owned by the central government, local authorities, or cooperative promoted and regulated by the state. The working class, in overthrowing the bourgeois state, will establish its own dictatorship of the proletariat to destroy the bourgeois class. Under socialism, production is planned as is the rate of investment with the profit motive and free market were eliminated as a major guiding forces for the economy. The dialectical process continues until finally the state withers away and pure communism prevails. Then socialism is from each according to their ability to each according to their work, which means that in the Marxist view, such an arrangement will be made possible by the abundance of goods and services that a developed communist system will be capable to produce. The idea is that with the full development of socialism and unfettered productive forces, there will be enough to satisfy everyone's need. Okay, now we will go to the stage C, that is communism. Communism is a political and economic ideology that positions itself in opposition to liberal democracy and capitalism. The goal of communism is classless, stateless, moneyless society. Each leaders implemented communism in their own way. So they were Leninism, Stalinism, Trotskyism, and Maoism, which are essentially all versions of Karl Marx communism. In communism, it is the working class who own everything, and what the collective produce as a whole is shared out according to need. The dialectical process continues until finally the state withers away and pure communism prevails. Communism is from each according to their ability to each according to their needs, which means that everyone contributes in the way and to the capability that they are able and receive everything they need from the labors of others. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, so in conclusion, what can be concluded through the Marx theory of history? The Marx theory of history has left us and provide us a wide framework, a huge benefit framework for us to analyze the human society. And by using the theory of history, we can analyze the laws and the nature of the developing the human society itself. So also next, while developing the theory of history, Marx also were influenced by some of the big figure and the philosophers, for example, like Charles Robert Darwin, George Hegel, and also Ludwig Feuerbach. So uh, through the theory of history, we can see the correlation between Marx theory of history and some others philosophers theory like Charles Darwin, natural selection, dialectical process by George Hegel, and also the philosophical materialism by Feuerbach. So Marx sees the parallels between the Darwin's theory of the evolutions and natural selections and his own theories of political economy. And then Marx also agreed with Hegel's theory of three-step dialectical process, which include the thesis and antithesis. So also Marx also replaced the Hegel's idealism with his replaced with a modified version of the Ludwig Feuerbach concept of philosophical materialism. So because of this, we can see the correlation between Marx theory of history and also the others figures theory, philosophers theory. Also we also can conclude that the history is a process which the static relation of production, the thesis, has come into the eventual conflict with the dynamic force of production, antithesis, FOP and ROP. So for the Marx theory of history of the FOP versus ROP, Marx has developed his theory of history by combining Darwin's theory of evolutions and natural selections and Hegel's dialectical process, also the Feuerbach materialism. So according to Marx, the force of production, FOP, has generated a set of production relation, ROP, that support each other, but also they are contradict to each other. FOP includes the technology level, advancement technology, the capital types, and also the labor skill level, while the ROP include the loss, property relation, and also the social relationships among individuals. So the different that stated that the FOP are dynamic and always constant evolving. So meanwhile, the ROP is static. So that's the difference that stated by Marx through the theory of history. So also the class struggle is the mechanism for overthrowing the previous societies. So also the last one is the, we can see Marx sees the sixth stage of the sixth stage of the society evolving. So Marx saw it from the primitive communism to the slavery, and from the slavery to the feudalism, from feudalism to the capitalism, and then to the socialism, and the last one to the communism. So that's all from our group, group one, for the Marx theory of history. Thank you for listening.